Hands behind your back. Maggie stood beside the red Ferrari as 30 phones rose around her. Officer, the registration has my name on it, she said calmly. Nobody stepped forward. Rachel picked up the document. Margaret Brooks. Tyler still refused to release her. Then Maggie asked for one call. As it connected, command vehicles appeared at the end of the street, and Tyler finally realized the truth was already coming for him. Put both hands on the hood. Now. Margaret Brooks stopped beside the red Ferrari and turned her head slowly. For a moment, the sounds of Old Town Alexandria seemed strangely distant. Cars rolled along the street beyond Whitmore Market. Shopping carts rattled across the brick-edged parking lot. Somewhere near the entrance, a delivery truck gave 2 short beeps as it backed toward the loading area. Maggie heard all of it, but mostly she heard the officer behind her. "Ma'am," I said, hands on the car. She looked down at the key in her right hand, then at the polished red door beside her. "Officer," she said carefully, "this is my car." Officer Tyler Grant stared at her. He was close enough now that Maggie could see his reflection in the Ferrari's window. His eyes moved over her faded gray cardigan, the plain blouse beneath it, the orthopedic shoes, the wooden cane resting against the car, and the worn brown handbag hanging from her shoulder. Then he looked at the Ferrari. A 1987 Ferrari 328 GTS did not disappear into a parking lot. Its low red body caught the afternoon sun like flame. People noticed it before they noticed almost anything else. Tyler looked back at Maggie. The disbelief on his face required no explanation. Maggie felt something old tighten inside her. She was 70 years old. She had learned long ago that there were moments when arguing only gave another person permission to stop listening, so she kept her voice level. "The registration is in my handbag. My insurance card is there too. My name is Margaret Brooks. Don't reach into that bag." "I wasn't going to. Put the keys down." Maggie bent slightly, then stopped when a dull ache caught in her shoulder. "I need to move slowly." "Keys, down." She placed them carefully on the pavement. The scratched brass tag attached to the ring struck the asphalt with a small metallic click. JB, MB. Her eyes stayed on it for half a second longer than they should have. Then she straightened. A woman leaving Whitmore Market had stopped with 2 grocery bags in her arms. A man near the cart return was staring. Another shopper pulled out a phone. Then another. Maggie noticed the screens before she noticed the faces. "Officer Grant," she said after reading the nameplate above his pocket. "Would you please tell me what this is about? We received a report involving a stolen vehicle." "And you believe this is the vehicle?" "I'm asking the questions." Maggie glanced at the Ferrari. "That should be easy to settle." Tyler's jaw tightened. "Hands on the hood." She didn't move. Not out of defiance. For one quiet second, she simply stood there with her handbag against her hip and the cane beside the car, looking at the officer as if she were giving him one last opportunity to see the person in front of him. "My identification matches the registration," she said. "The registration matches the VIN. You can run the license plate without touching me. Turn around." A murmur passed through the growing crowd. Maggie looked toward it. Maybe 20 adults now. A few had stopped on the sidewalk. Others stood outside the market beneath the green awning. Nearly half were holding phones. Nobody came closer. She knew that kind of distance. Close enough to witness. Far enough not to become involved. "Officer," Maggie said, "I have done nothing wrong." Tyler stepped toward her. "People say that every day." There it was. Not evidence, not verification, a conclusion. Maggie lowered her eyes for a moment. The afternoon sun warmed the back of her neck. Beneath the cardigan, her skin still felt tender from the medical tape that had been removed earlier that morning. She had promised herself she would take things slowly today. One small trip, one bag of peaches, one can of James's favorite coffee. Then home. That was all. Instead, Strangers were filming her beside the car her husband had once spent whole Saturdays rebuilding with grease under his fingernails. "Please," she said. "My cane is right there. Let me sit while you verify the paperwork." "You're not going anywhere." "I didn't say I was." Tyler reached for her arm. Maggie pulled back instinctively, barely an inch. His expression changed. "Don't resist me." "I am not resisting you." "Then turn around." A younger man near a white delivery van took several steps closer. He wore work boots and a navy delivery shirt, and his phone was already recording. "Officer," he called, "why don't you just run the plate?" Several heads turned toward him. Tyler did not. "Stay out of this. I'm just saying it takes 10 seconds. I said stay back." The young man stopped, but he did not lower the phone. Maggie looked at him and gave the smallest nod. "Thank you." It was barely a movement, but he seemed to understand. Tyler reached toward his belt. Maggie saw the handcuffs. Her breath caught. "Officer Grant, turn around." "My shoulder doesn't bend well behind my back." "Turn around. I can cooperate without being cuffed." "That's not your decision." The first edge of fear entered her voice, not panic, something quieter. "Please listen to me." Tyler took her right wrist. Maggie flinched. The crowd shifted, shoes scraping against pavement, but no one crossed the empty space around them. "I am listening," Tyler said. "You're the one making this difficult." "No." Maggie looked directly at him. "No, I'm not." For the first time, irritation flashed openly across his face. He turned her toward the Ferrari. Maggie caught herself with one palm against the roofline. Hands on the hood. She slowly placed them there. The red paint was hot beneath her palms. For one strange instant, all she could see was her own reflection in the windshield. Silver hair, tired eyes. A woman in an old cardigan, leaning against one of the most beautiful things James had ever restored. A camera shutter clicked somewhere behind her. Someone whispered something. Another person laughed nervously. Maggie closed her eyes. She remembered another kind of silence from years ago. Rooms where people saw what was happening, and decided that looking uncomfortable counted as helping. She had survived those rooms too. She opened her eyes. "May I ask you something?" Tyler took one wrist from the hood. "What?" "If you won't look at my registration, and you won't run the plate, what exactly could I show you that you would believe?" Tyler said nothing. That silence answered her. He pulled her wrist gently at first, then more firmly behind her. Pain ran through her shoulder. Maggie sucked in a breath. "Please, not that far." "Relax. I am trying." The first cuff closed. Click. The sound was smaller than Maggie expected. That made it worse. Across the lot, more phones lifted. Tyler reached for her other hand. "Officer." "What now?" "I want to make a phone call." A few people in the crowd looked at one another. Tyler gave a short laugh. "You can worry about that later. I would prefer to make it now." "You're in no position to prefer anything." Maggie turned her face enough to see him from the corner of her eye. The fear was still there. So was the pain. But something else had settled over her now. Something Tyler mistook for surrender. Certainty. "All right," she said softly. He paused. The answer seemed to bother him more than an argument would have. "All right, what?" Maggie looked down toward her handbag. Its zipper was partly open. Inside were her reading glasses, medication, registration, and beneath them, tucked into a narrow side pocket, a faded photograph she had carried for more than 20 years. Tyler followed her gaze but saw only an old woman's worn purse. He had no reason to look closer. Not yet. Maggie turned her eyes back toward the Ferrari. "Nothing," she said. "I'm just going to remember that I asked." The second cuff closed. Behind them, the delivery driver's phone continued recording. Around him, nearly everyone else remained silent. And inside Maggie's handbag, Hidden beneath a bottle of medication and a folded insurance card, an old photograph waited to tell Officer Tyler Grant exactly whose mother he had just put in handcuffs. 2 hours earlier, Maggie Brooks stepped through the glass doors of an Alexandria medical clinic and stopped beneath the awning to let her eyes adjust to the morning light. The day was already warm. Traffic whispered over the pavement beyond the parking lot, and somewhere down the block, a city bus sighed at the curb before pulling away. "Mrs. Brooks?" Maggie turned. A clinic attendant stood just inside the doors. "I can bring a wheelchair." Maggie smiled. "That's kind of you, but I've got my cane." "Take it slow then." "I intend to." She meant it. The doctor had spent most of the appointment reminding her that healing did not care how independent she had been for the previous 70 years. Her shoulder still protested certain movements, and exhaustion came faster than it used to. But Maggie had one small errand to make. Tomorrow would have been her 46th wedding anniversary. She crossed the parking lot carefully until the red Ferrari came into view. Even after all these years, the car could stop her for a second. A 1987 Ferrari 328 GTS was not something anyone expected to find parked outside an ordinary medical clinic, especially one with a scratched brass key tag and an owner who still kept grocery coupons folded inside her handbag. Maggie ran her fingers over the tag. JBMB James Brooks to Margaret Brooks. Her husband had made it himself. He had been a master auto body technician with patient hands and a stubborn belief that anything mechanical deserved a second life if someone cared enough to give it one. The Ferrari had arrived in pieces. Maggie could still remember that afternoon. James had been 52, already gray at the temples, standing beside a trailer carrying a battered red car that looked like somebody had forgotten it behind a repair shop. Maggie had stared at him. "James," he had smiled. That smile had always meant trouble. "Before you say anything, I got a good price." "That is what you said about the boat." The boat floated. Eventually, James had laughed so hard he had to lean against the trailer. They had never been wealthy. Maggie worked nights in hospitals sterile processing, cleaning, and preparing instruments most patients never knew existed. James spent his days repairing other people's cars and his evenings in their modest garage, where an old radio played soul music while he brought the Ferrari back one panel at a time. There had been no mansion, no country club, no collection of exotic cars, just a narrow driveway, a crowded garage, coffee and chipped mugs, and two people who understood the difference between expensive things and valuable ones. The Ferrari took years. James rebuilt the body, repaired the interior, searched swap meets and specialty shops for parts. Maggie sometimes found him asleep in a folding chair beside it, with a wrench still in his hand. When it finally ran properly, he refused to call it his. "Ours," he corrected her. Years later, when his health began to fail, he scratched the letters into the brass tag himself. JBMB. "You're giving me a Ferrari?" Maggie had asked. "No." James placed the keys in her palm. "I'm leaving you all those Saturdays you complained about." She had laughed then. She could not laugh about it now. James had died at 72. After the funeral, Maggie went almost 4 months without opening the garage. The first time she did, the smell hit her hardest. Leather, old motor oil, wax, and the faint trace of the coffee James used to leave cooling on his workbench. She had sat in the driver's seat without starting the engine and cried until evening. After that, she made herself a promise. Once every anniversary week, she would drive it. Not far, just enough. That morning, the Ferrari's engine settled into a low, familiar hum as Maggie eased onto the road. She did not drive fast. James would have teased her for that. The city moved around her in late morning pieces. Brick storefronts, traffic lights, delivery vans, pedestrians waiting at corners. The Ferrari attracted glances at nearly every stop. Maggie barely noticed. Her first destination was several miles away, in a working-class neighborhood where the apartment buildings were older and the trees had grown broad enough to shade entire sidewalks. She parked beside a worn brick building and reached for the grocery bag on the passenger seat. Evelyn Carter, 74, was already waiting downstairs. "Well, you weren't supposed to bring all that." Evelyn had retired from nursing years earlier and now moved with the deliberate care of someone whose knees had negotiated enough hospital corridors for one lifetime. Maggie handed her the bag. "It's milk, bread, soup, and those crackers you like." "I can pay you." "I know." "Maggie." "I know." Evelyn narrowed her eyes. "You are the most irritating woman I have ever met." "That isn't what you said when I brought peach cobbler." "That was different," Maggie laughed. Evelyn looked past her, then stopped. "Oh, Lord. You brought James's car. Anniversary week." The humor left Evelyn's face. She reached out and squeezed Maggie's hand. "I remembered." For a moment, neither woman spoke. A lawnmower buzzed somewhere behind the building. A radio played through an open window above them. Evelyn glanced at Maggie's shoulder. "How did the appointment go?" "Doctor says I'm healing." "That wasn't my question," Maggie sighed. "He told me not to overdo anything. And naturally you decided that meant delivering my groceries. You needed them. I could have managed." "I know." Evelyn studied her old friend, then smiled. "That heart of yours is going to get you in trouble." Maggie gave her a look. "My heart is just fine." "I'm speaking figuratively." "Well, figuratively, mind your business." They both laughed. Maggie waited until Evelyn was safely inside before returning to the Ferrari. She stood beside it for a moment, leaning lightly on her cane. James would have liked that visit. He had always said Maggie could turn a 10-minute errand into an hour because she kept finding somebody who needed something. She never thought of it that way. People helped people. At least, they were supposed to. She slid behind the wheel. Whitmore Market was next. Fresh peaches, James's coffee, then home. The market sat near the polished edge of Old Town, where historic brick buildings met expensive restaurants and renovated condominiums. Whitmore itself catered to people willing to pay $12 for cheese Maggie could not pronounce. James had loved the place for one reason: their peaches. He claimed they tasted like summer used to taste. Maggie had never figured out what that meant. She bought them anyway. She parked carefully near the side of the market, away from the tightest spaces. Before getting out, she rested her hand on the steering wheel. 46 years tomorrow, she whispered. The empty passenger seat offered no answer. Maggie smiled sadly. Still haven't learned to make coffee worth drinking without you. She tucked the keys into her handbag. Beneath her medication and reading glasses sat the registration and insurance card. In the narrow side pocket was an old photograph she almost never removed. She touched the edge of it without pulling it free. Then she took her cane and went inside. 20 minutes later, Maggie emerged carrying a small paper bag of peaches and a can of James's favorite coffee. She was halfway across the lot when she noticed the gray SUV. A woman sat behind the wheel watching her. Maggie recognized her vaguely. Diane Keller, 59. She lived in one of the renovated condominium buildings several blocks away. They had crossed paths before, though Diane had never offered more than the briefest acknowledgement. Maggie gave her a polite nod. Diane did not return it. Her eyes moved from Maggie to the Ferrari, then back again. Maggie continued walking. She had spent too many years learning not to let another person's expression decide the shape of her day. At the Ferrari, she balanced her cane against the door and unlocked the passenger side. Behind her, inside the gray SUV, Diane reached for her phone. She watched Maggie place one hand on the Ferrari, watched the expensive door open, watched an older black woman in a faded cardigan set a bag of peaches onto the leather seat. And instead of asking a question, Diane formed an answer. Her thumb moved across the screen. 3 numbers. Maggie never heard the call begin. She was looking down at James's scratched brass key tag, smiling at a memory. Behind her, Diane raised the phone to her ear. "Yes," she said when the dispatcher answered. "I'd like to report something suspicious." The dispatcher's voice came through calm and practiced. "What are you seeing, ma'am?" Diane watched Maggie through the windshield of her gray SUV. The older woman had finished placing the peaches on the passenger seat. She was standing beside the Ferrari now, one hand resting lightly on the open door, the other steadying herself with her cane. "There's a woman at Whitmore Market," Diane said. "She's messing around with a Ferrari." "Messing around how?" Diane frowned. The question irritated her. "She opened it. Did you see her force entry?" "No." "Did you see her break a window?" "No, but is the vehicle alarm sounding?" "No." The dispatcher paused. "Does she appear to have a key?" Diane's eyes narrowed. From where she sat, she could see Maggie holding something in one hand. Probably keys. That should have ended it. Instead, Diane shifted in her seat. "I don't know what she has." "What makes you believe the vehicle may be stolen?" For several seconds, Diane said nothing. Outside, Maggie slowly closed the passenger door and adjusted the strap of her worn handbag. Diane had seen her before. Not often, a few times around the neighborhood, once outside the pharmacy, twice walking near the older brick apartments where Evelyn Carter lived. Always dressed plainly, always alone, always with that same cane. She did not fit the Ferrari in Diane's mind, and once that thought took shape, everything else seemed to arrange itself around it. "She just doesn't look like the owner." The dispatcher's tone remained neutral. "Can you describe the woman?" "Black, older, maybe late 60s or 70, gray hair, cardigan, cane." "Is she threatening anyone?" "No." "Do you see a weapon?" Diane hesitated. "No." Another pause. "Then at this time we have a suspicious person report involving a vehicle. Officers can check the situation." Diane stared at Maggie. That did not feel urgent enough. What if she drives away? If she has lawful access to the vehicle, driving away would not be a crime. Diane's mouth tightened. She could be stealing it right now. "Ma'am, did you witness an act of theft?" "No, but I'm telling you something is wrong." The dispatcher repeated the question carefully. "Did you see her take the vehicle without permission?" Diane's gaze hardened. Maggie had opened the driver's door now. For one fleeting second, common sense offered Diane an exit. Maybe it belonged to her. Maybe there was a perfectly ordinary explanation, but backing away would mean admitting the entire call had come from an assumption. So Diane leaned further into it. "She may be armed." The dispatcher's voice changed immediately. "What makes you believe she may have a weapon?" Diane swallowed. "I don't know. She has a bag." "Did you see a weapon?" "No." "Did she threaten you?" "No." "Did anyone tell you she was armed?" "No, but people steal cars. You don't know what they're carrying." The dispatcher entered the update exactly as Diane said it. Possible vehicle theft. Possible weapon based on caller concern. No weapon observed. No forced entry observed. No threat observed. Every word was recorded. Diane did not know that yet. She only knew that somewhere across Alexandria, a patrol officer would now hear the part that sounded dangerous. And Officer Tyler Grant did. His radio cracked inside the patrol car 2 miles away. "Unit 12, suspicious vehicle incident at Whitmore Market. Caller reports an older female possibly attempting to take a red Ferrari. Possible weapon, unconfirmed." Tyler reached for the radio. "Unit 12, copy." He was 35, 8 years into the department, old enough to know that first impressions could be wrong and ambitious enough to sometimes treat hesitation as weakness. The shift had been quiet. Parking complaint, noise dispute, a minor fender bender near Duke Street. Nothing that made him feel useful. A Ferrari theft did. He turned onto the next street and increased speed. The dispatcher continued. Caller describes black female, approximately 70, gray hair, cardigan, using a cane. No weapon actually observed. Tyler heard the description. He barely registered the last sentence. A luxury car, a suspicious person, possible weapon. His mind filled in the gaps before evidence ever had the chance. He had seen stolen vehicles before. Sometimes thieves carried keys taken during burglaries. Sometimes paperwork stayed inside cars. Sometimes people lied calmly. By the time he reached the next light, he was no longer driving toward an uncertain report. In his mind, he was heading toward a suspect. Back at Whitmore Market, Maggie lowered herself carefully into the Ferrari. She sat for a moment before starting the engine. Her shoulder ached. Not badly. Just enough to remind her that the doctor had been right about slowing down. She glanced at the peaches. One had rolled against the coffee can. "James, you still have me driving across town for fruit," she murmured. The engine turned over with the smooth, low note she remembered from years of Saturday mornings. Several people in the lot looked over. Maggie smiled faintly. James would have enjoyed that. He had loved pretending not to notice people staring. Then a siren sounded in the distance. Maggie looked toward the street. Blue lights appeared between the buildings. Fast. Closer. For a second she assumed the officer was going somewhere beyond the market. Then the patrol car turned sharply into the lot. Its tires chirped against the pavement. Maggie's smile disappeared. The cruiser swung across the loading lane and stopped at an angle several yards from the Ferrari. The driver's door opened almost before the car settled. Tyler Grant stepped out. One hand hovered near his belt. His eyes went immediately to the Ferrari, then to Maggie. Diane watched from the SUV. A small pulse of satisfaction moved through her. See? She had been right to call. The officer would sort it out. Maggie opened the Ferrari door slowly. Tyler raised his voice. "Stay where you are." She froze halfway out. "Excuse me?" "Step away from the vehicle." Maggie looked behind herself, then back at him. "Officer, is something wrong?" "I said step away from the vehicle." She eased herself upright. Her cane was still beside that passenger seat. "I need my cane." "Leave it. I have trouble walking without it." "Ma'am, do not reach back into the vehicle." Maggie stared at him. The command made no sense. Neither did the tension in his stance. "I'm not reaching for anything dangerous." "I didn't ask what you were reaching for." A couple leaving the market slowed. Another shopper stopped beside the cart return. Diane remained inside her SUV, watching. Maggie placed both hands where Tyler could see them. "Can you tell me what this is about?" "Whose car is this?" The question landed oddly. Maggie glanced at the Ferrari. "Mine." Tyler's eyes moved over her. Faded cardigan, orthopedic shoes, plain handbag, gray hair, then back to the red Ferrari. He almost smiled, not warmly. "Yours?" "Yes." "How long have you owned it?" Maggie's confusion gave way to caution. "It has been in my family for years." "That isn't what I asked. It belonged to my husband before he died. It is legally mine." Tyler stepped closer. "Do you have proof?" "Yes." Maggie touched the strap of her handbag with 2 fingers. "My registration and insurance are inside." Tyler's posture stiffened immediately. "Do not reach into that bag." Her hand stopped. "I wasn't going to without telling you. Keep your hands visible." "All right." She lowered them slowly. The Ferrari idled behind her, red paint glowing beneath the late morning sun. Tyler looked at the license plate. He could have called it in then. He could have read the characters into his radio and waited less than a minute. Instead, he looked at Maggie again. The dispatcher's description had become flesh in front of him. Older black woman, Ferrari, possible theft, possible weapon. His assumption now felt like confirmation. "Step toward the front of the car." Maggie did not move. "Officer, before we do anything else, please run the plate." Tyler's expression hardened. You don't tell me how to conduct an investigation. I'm not trying to. You are. No. Her voice stayed quiet. That seemed to irritate him more. I'm trying to save both of us time. Someone near the market entrance raised a phone. Maggie noticed. Then another person did the same. The first small ring of witnesses began to form. Diane's call had lasted less than 5 minutes. Tyler had been on scene less than 1. And already, the afternoon had begun arranging itself around a version of Maggie Brooks that nobody had taken the trouble to verify. Tyler pointed toward the Ferrari's hood. Move over there. Maggie's hand tightened around the strap of her handbag. Inside it sat the registration, the insurance card, her medication, and a faded photograph of an adult son standing outside the FBI Academy more than 20 years earlier. Maggie had no idea that before the day was over, that photograph would matter almost as much as the registration. For now, all Tyler saw was an old purse, and all he believed was the story he had decided on before he ever arrived. He raised his voice. Ma'am, I'm not going to tell you again. Maggie looked at him for a long second. Then she slowly began walking toward the hood of James's Ferrari. Her cane was still inside the car. Without it, each step required thought. Maggie kept her left hand slightly away from her side for balance while Tyler Grant watched her cross the few feet between the driver's door and the front fender. The Ferrari idled behind her, its engine making a low, steady sound that seemed almost too calm for the tension gathering around it. Stop there, Tyler said. Maggie stopped. He pointed toward the hood. Hands where I can see them. She placed both palms lightly on the red paint. The metal was warm from the sun. For a moment, Maggie stared at the small reflection of her own face stretched across the curved hood. Silver hair, fine lines, tired eyes. James used to polish this car until the paint looked deep enough to fall into. He would have hated seeing her hands pressed against it like this. Not because of fingerprints, because of what the gesture meant. Officer Grant, Maggie said, I would like to understand what you believe I've done. Tyler remained several feet behind her. We got a report this vehicle may be stolen. You said that, and you were found with it. Maggie turned her head slightly. I was not found with it. I drove it here. Face forward, she did. Her voice stayed even. The registration is in my handbag. So is the insurance card. My driver's license is there as well. Tyler looked toward the worn brown bag hanging from her shoulder. Don't touch it. I understand. Then stop talking about reaching for it. I'm not asking to reach for it without permission. Tyler gave a short breath through his nose. Maggie could hear the impatience in it. Behind them, the quiet ring of spectators had grown. A man holding a basket of groceries stood near the market doors. 2 women remained beside a dark sedan instead of getting inside. A delivery worker in a navy shirt had stopped near his van and was watching carefully. Phones were beginning to rise, one after another, small black rectangles catching sunlight. Maggie noticed the movement and felt a familiar ache that had nothing to do with her shoulder. People were curious. Curiosity was easy. Courage cost more. She looked back at Tyler. Can you run the license plate? I know how to do my job. I didn't say you didn't. You're telling me what to do. No, sir. I'm telling you how quickly this can be cleared up. Tyler stepped closer. You seem awfully confident. Maggie almost smiled, but there was no humor in it. I know who owns my car. His face tightened. The answer had landed badly. Maggie realized something then. This was no longer only about whether Tyler believed the Ferrari was stolen. Somewhere between the radio call and the moment he saw her standing beside the red car, he had built a story in his mind. Now every calm answer sounded like defiance. Every request for verification sounded like challenge. Every piece of evidence that might prove him wrong had become something he did not want to examine. Turn around, he said. Maggie carefully lifted one hand from the hood. May I have my cane first? No. I have trouble standing without it for long periods. You're standing. For the moment. Tyler looked past her toward the open driver's door. Why were you inside the vehicle? Maggie blinked. Because I was leaving. Where were you going? Home. Where is home? She gave him her Alexandria address. He repeated the street name as if testing it. Maggie knew what he was doing, trying to find the crack, trying to catch hesitation. She had nothing to hide, which somehow seemed to make him more suspicious. How long have you had the car? It became legally mine after my husband died. Before that? It was ours. And where did he get it? Maggie finally turned enough to look at him. My husband restored it. Tyler glanced at the Ferrari. Your husband restored a Ferrari? Yes. What did he do? He was a master auto body technician. Tyler's eyes moved over her again. The cardigan, the orthopedic shoes, the old handbag. The expression was quick, but Maggie saw it. The mental calculation, the quiet disbelief. She had seen that look before, years earlier, when she and James first started saving for their house, at a bank, at a furniture store, at a restaurant where the hostess assumed they were waiting for a takeout order. Nothing dramatic enough to become a story. Just little decisions made by strangers about what kind of life they thought Maggie Brooks could possibly have. James used to squeeze her hand afterward. Don't carry their imagination home with you, Maggie. She heard his voice now as clearly as if he were standing beside the Ferrari. She drew a slow breath. Officer Grant. What? You do not have to believe me. He stared at her. Maggie continued. You only have to verify me. The parking lot seemed to grow quieter. Even the people recording appeared to understand that something important had just been said. Tyler's face changed. Not embarrassment, not doubt, resistance. I said I'm conducting an investigation, and I am cooperating with it. Then stop questioning me. Maggie lowered her eyes. There it was again. The closed door. She had spent 32 years in hospital sterile processing. Night shifts, weekend shifts, holiday shifts. She had prepared surgical instruments for doctors who never knew her name and patients who never knew she existed. She had stayed late when someone called out sick. She had helped frightened new employees learn the work without making them feel small. More than once, she had driven an older coworker home after midnight because the last bus had already left. She had never expected applause for any of it. But she had always expected one basic thing, to be treated like a human being. Now a stranger with a badge stood behind her, refusing to check a license plate because the answer might contradict the picture he had already painted. The thought hurt more than she wanted it to. Can you at least tell me what the caller claimed to see? Maggie asked. Tyler's voice sharpened. Possible vehicle theft. Possible weapon. Maggie turned fully this time. A weapon? Face the car. I have never carried a weapon in my life. That's not something I'm going to take your word for. My handbag has medication, my glasses, my wallet, and paperwork for this car. Keep your hands away from it. I am. Tyler stepped close enough that Maggie could smell coffee on his breath. Then why are you so nervous? Maggie stared at him. Nervous? Your hands are shaking. She looked down. He was right. Her fingers trembled against the Ferrari's hood. Not from guilt. Not even mostly from fear. Her shoulder had begun to ache more sharply, and standing without the cane was tiring her faster than she wanted him to know. I was at a medical appointment this morning, she said. I am supposed to take things slowly. What kind of appointment? That is private. Tyler gave a humorless laugh. Now it's private. Maggie closed her eyes for 1 second. The words stung. When she opened them again, her expression had changed. Still calm, but the warmth was gone. Medical information being private does not make me a thief. Tyler's hand moved closer to his belt. From near the delivery van, the young man in the navy shirt called out, "Officer, just run the plate." Tyler turned sharply. "Stay where you are." The man raised his free hand. "I'm staying right here." His phone remained pointed toward the scene. "It would tell you who owns the car." "This does not concern you." The young man looked toward Maggie. "It concerns everybody watching." That drew a reaction from the crowd. Not words, a shift. A few people looked at each other instead of their screens. Tyler stepped toward the young man. "You want to interfere with a police investigation?" "No." "Then back up. I'm 20 feet away." "Make it 30. The man took 2 slow steps back, but he kept recording. Maggie watched him. There was fear in his face. He was not fearless. He was simply speaking anyway. That mattered. A second patrol car turned into the lot. Its lights were off. It rolled toward them at ordinary speed and stopped several spaces away. The driver's door opened. Officer Rachel Moore stepped out. 32 years old, dark hair pulled back, posture alert. She took in the scene before saying anything. Maggie at the hood. No cane in reach. The open Ferrari. Groceries visible on the passenger seat. Tyler standing behind her. The crowd. The phones. Rachel's eyes moved to the license plate, then to Maggie, then to Tyler. "What have we got?" she asked. "Possible stolen vehicle," Tyler said. Rachel glanced at the Ferrari again. "Did we run the plate?" For the first time since he arrived, Tyler did not answer immediately. Maggie heard the pause. So did Rachel. Her expression changed almost imperceptibly. Not enough for anyone else to notice. But Maggie noticed. Tyler finally said, "I'm handling it." Rachel looked at him, then at Maggie's trembling hands, then toward the cane still visible inside the Ferrari. Something uneasy settled into her face. Maggie saw it and felt the faintest rise of hope. Perhaps this woman would ask the next question. Perhaps she would simply walk to her cruiser, enter the plate, and end the whole thing. Rachel's lips parted. Tyler spoke first. "Ma'am, step away from the hood." Maggie slowly straightened. Her shoulder protested immediately. Tyler reached toward his handcuffs. Rachel looked down at his hand. Maggie saw her see it. "Officer Grant," Maggie said, "my shoulder cannot safely bend very far behind my back." Tyler pulled the cuffs free. The metal gave a quiet rattle. Rachel's eyes lifted to his, and for one suspended moment, everyone in the parking lot seemed to wait for her to decide what kind of officer she was going to be. Rachel Moore looked from the handcuffs in Tyler's hand to Maggie Brooks standing unsteadily beside the Ferrari. "Tyler," she said quietly, "maybe we should run the plate first." It was not defiance. Not yet. It sounded almost like a suggestion between co-workers. Tyler glanced at her. "I said I'm handling it." Rachel's jaw tightened. She had been a police officer long enough to recognize the tone. It was the voice people used when disagreement began to feel like disloyalty. "I understand," she said. "I'm just saying we can clear ownership in less than a minute. And if the car is stolen, then we'll know that too." Tyler stared at her for a beat. Maggie watched the exchange without speaking. Hope had entered her chest when Rachel arrived, but it was already shrinking. She had known people like Rachel throughout her life. Good people, mostly. People who saw the problem. People who understood it. People who told themselves afterward that they had almost said something. Tyler turned back toward Maggie. "Hands behind your back." Maggie's fingers curled slightly. "My shoulder. I heard you. Then please listen to what I'm telling you. It does not move that far." Rachel stepped closer. "Ma'am, do you have some kind of injury?" "I'm recovering from treatment." "What kind?" Maggie hesitated. "Enough that my doctor told me not to strain it." Rachel looked toward Tyler again. That's another reason we can slow this down. Tyler gave her a hard look. You want to conduct the stop? Rachel said nothing. The question was not really an offer. It was a warning. Around them, phones remained raised. The delivery driver had moved farther back as ordered, but his camera stayed fixed on Maggie. Tyler pointed at him. You, blue shirt. The man lowered the phone just enough to look over it. What? Name. Marcus Reed. How old are you, Marcus? 29. What are you doing here? Delivering an order. Then deliver it. Marcus glanced toward Maggie. I will, after this. Tyler's voice hardened. You're interfering. I'm standing where you told me to stand. You're distracting people. From what? Rachel closed her eyes for half a second. Maggie saw it. Marcus did too. Tyler took one step toward him. Keep pushing, and I'll detain you. Marcus swallowed. The courage in his face did not look heroic. It looked uncomfortable. His left hand trembled slightly around the phone, but he did not stop recording. All I said, Marcus replied, was run the plate. A few people in the crowd murmured. Tyler turned toward them. Anybody else want to become part of this investigation? Silence. Several phones dipped. Nobody answered. Tyler looked back at Maggie as if the silence proved something. Hands behind your back. Maggie drew a careful breath. Officer Grant, I will cooperate. Good. But I want Officer Moore to hear me say this clearly. Rachel looked at her. My shoulder is limited. I have told you that. My cane is inside the car, and I am having difficulty standing without it. I hear you, Rachel said. Maggie held her gaze. There was no accusation in the older woman's eyes. That somehow made it harder. Thank you, Maggie said. Tyler took her right wrist. He guided it behind her. Maggie winced. Slowly. I am going slowly. A little lower, please. Tyler moved her wrist another inch. Pain flashed across her face. Rachel saw it. Tyler! He stopped. What? She's telling you it hurts. People don't like being cuffed. That's not what I said. Tyler turned his head. You second-guessing me in front of a crowd now? Rachel's cheeks colored. The question hung between them. Maggie looked toward the market entrance. About 30 adults now. A man in a golf shirt. 2 women holding shopping bags. An older couple near the curb. A restaurant employee still wearing a black apron. Everybody watching. Nobody speaking. Maggie remembered another day decades earlier when she had been the one watching. She had been 28 then. Already married to James. Working an evening shift at the hospital. A newly hired cleaner had been blamed for damaging equipment she had never touched. Maggie knew because she had been there. She had spoken up. Quietly. The supervisor had not liked it. Maggie had spent the next 3 months on the worst shifts in the department. James had asked her one night whether she regretted saying anything. No, she had told him. Why not? Because she was standing there alone. Now Maggie was the one standing alone. Almost. Marcus still had his phone raised. Rachel still looked troubled. But troubled was not the same thing as brave. Tyler reached for Maggie's other wrist. She shifted her weight instinctively. Without her cane, her left foot slipped half a step. Her hip bumped the Ferrari. Careful, Rachel said. Tyler caught Maggie by the upper arm. The sudden grip made her gasp. I'm not fighting you. Then stand still. I'm trying to balance. Stand still. I need my cane. You're not reaching inside that vehicle. You can get it for me. Tyler did not answer. Rachel looked through the open Ferrari door. The wooden cane was plainly visible beside the seat. So were the groceries, a paper bag of peaches, a can of coffee. Nothing about the scene resembled the dangerous vehicle theft Tyler seemed determined to find. Rachel walked 2 steps toward the Ferrari. Tyler's voice stopped her. "What are you doing?" "Getting her cane." "Leave it," Rachel turned. "Why?" The word came out before she could soften it. The parking lot went still again. Tyler stared at her. Rachel's face changed immediately. She knew she had crossed a line in his mind. "Because," Tyler said slowly, "we haven't cleared that vehicle. It's a cane, and we haven't cleared the vehicle." Rachel looked at Maggie. Maggie gave her the slightest nod. Not permission, not forgiveness, something gentler. "It's all right." That made Rachel feel worse. She stepped back. Tyler pulled Maggie's second arm behind her. The first cuff closed around her right wrist. A metallic click. Maggie's eyes shut. Her breathing became shallow. Marcus lifted the phone higher. "Officer, come on." Tyler ignored him. The second cuff came around Maggie's left wrist. She tried to angle her shoulder. "Please don't pull it higher." "Relax your arms." "I am." "You're tensing." "Because it hurts." Tyler brought the cuffs together. Rachel watched Maggie's face. Not angry, not defiant. Pain. Real pain. "Tyler, enough!" His hands stopped. Rachel had spoken louder this time. Tyler looked at her. The crowd looked at her too. For 1 second, Rachel seemed surprised by her own voice. Then Tyler leaned slightly closer to her. "Officer Moore." He used her title, coldly. "This is an active detention. If you have an issue with procedure, you can bring it up after the stop." Rachel looked at Maggie, then at the people filming, then at Tyler. She knew what the right thing was. That was what would haunt her later. There was no confusion, no lack of information. She knew. And still, slowly, she stepped backward. Tyler closed the second cuff. Click. Maggie flinched. Her handbag slid farther down her shoulder. Marcus shook his head. 30 people standing here, he said quietly. Tyler turned toward him. "What did you say?" Marcus looked around the parking lot, at the glowing screens, at the silent faces, then back at Maggie. "I said there are 30 people standing here, and somehow she's still the one who has to prove she belongs." Nobody answered him. A breeze moved across the lot, lifting the corner of a receipt near the curb. Maggie looked at Rachel. Rachel could not meet her eyes. And in that moment, Maggie understood that the officer who knew something was wrong had made her choice. Tyler reached for Maggie's arm. "Let's move." Maggie tried to take one step. Her cane remained beside the Ferrari. Her balance shifted. The worn handbag finally slipped from her shoulder. It hit the pavement. The clasp opened. Medication rolled out first. Then her reading glasses. A folded insurance card. The vehicle registration. And beneath them, sliding face up into the sunlight, came a faded photograph of Maggie standing beside a much younger adult man in formal FBI Academy dress. Rachel's eyes dropped to the scattered belongings. So did Marcus's. Tyler looked down. For the first time since arriving, the truth was no longer hidden inside Maggie's handbag. It was lying directly at his feet. Tyler Grant looked down. A white prescription bottle had rolled near his shoe. Maggie's reading glasses rested crooked on the pavement. A folded insurance card lay beside a laminated registration slip, its printed lines bright beneath the Virginia sun. And just beyond them was the photograph, old enough that the colors had softened. Maggie stood in it 20 years younger, smiling beside a tall black man in formal FBI Academy dress. He was already fully grown, broad-shouldered, and serious, despite the pride in his eyes. Tyler glanced at the photograph for less than a second. His attention moved to the registration. Marcus Reed saw it too. "There," he called from behind his phone. "That's the paperwork. Read it." Tyler shot him a warning look. "Stay back." "I am back." Rachel crouched beside the scattered belongings before Tyler could stop her. She picked up the registration. Her eyes moved across the information. Vehicle 1987 Ferrari 328 GTS. The VIN matched the plate information visible through the windshield records attached to the document. Registered owner, Margaret Brooks. Rachel looked up at Maggie. "Ma'am, is Margaret Brooks your legal name?" "Yes." Tyler's head turned toward Rachel. "What are you doing?" "Verifying her." "I told you I'm handling it." Rachel stood with the registration still in her hand. "This matches her name." "You haven't checked her ID?" "Her license is probably right there." "That doesn't mean anything." Rachel stared at him. "What do you mean it doesn't mean anything?" "Stolen cars have paperwork in them." This was in her handbag, which could have been taken with the car. Maggie closed her eyes. That was the moment something inside her changed. Until then, a small part of her had still believed evidence would end this. Registration, insurance, plate, key, name. There had to be some combination of facts strong enough to pull a reasonable person back toward reason. Now she understood. Tyler did not have an evidence problem. He had a conclusion he was protecting. Marcus understood it too. "You asked for proof," he said. "Now the proof is right there." Tyler took one step toward him. "This is your last warning." Marcus's grip tightened around the phone. The live stream counter on his screen had passed 2,000 viewers. Comments moved too quickly to read. "Run the plate. Her name is on it. Why is she still cuffed?" Marcus barely noticed them. He was watching Maggie. Her wrists were trapped behind her. Without her cane, she leaned slightly toward the Ferrari to keep herself steady. 30 people surrounded the scene now. Some were recording openly. Others pretended to check their phones while listening. Nobody stepped into the empty space around Maggie. A woman near the market entrance whispered, "This is terrible." The man beside her nodded. Neither moved. Maggie heard them. She wished she had not. Tyler reached for the registration. Rachel hesitated before giving it to him. He read Maggie's name. Once. Then again. Margaret Brooks. For that briefest moment, doubt crossed his face. It was there. Rachel saw it. Marcus's camera caught it. Maggie felt it without even seeing him. Here was the exit. A simple one. Tyler could uncuff her. He could apologize for the inconvenience. He could say the call had required investigation and that the documents cleared everything up. It would not undo the humiliation, but it would stop it. Instead, Tyler looked toward the Ferrari, then back at Maggie. "You said your husband owned this before you?" "Yes." "And he's deceased?" Maggie's face tightened. "Yes." "How long?" 2 years. "So there's nobody here who can confirm your story." Rachel stared at him. "Tyler." He ignored her. Maggie slowly turned her head. "My husband being dead is not evidence against me." A murmur passed through the crowd. Tyler's mouth hardened. "I didn't say it was. You implied it. I'm establishing ownership. You are holding the ownership document." Tyler looked at the registration in his hand. Then he folded it once, not tearing it, not destroying it, just reducing it into something smaller, something he could control. "This still has to be authenticated." Marcus let out a disbelieving breath. "Oh, come on." Tyler swung toward him. "You want cuffs too?" Marcus went quiet. Not because Tyler was right, because fear finally reached him. His phone shook slightly in his hand. Maggie saw it. "Marcus," she said. He looked at her. It was the first time she had spoken his name. She had heard Tyler ask for it earlier. "Don't get yourself arrested for me." Marcus swallowed. "Ma'am, you're helping." Her voice softened. "Just stay where you are." Marcus nodded. He did, but the camera stayed. Rachel looked down at the photograph still lying near Maggie's medication. She picked it up carefully. The man in the picture bothered her. Something about his eyes, something about the face. She had seen it before. Not recently enough to place immediately, but somewhere official. A briefing screen, a federal memo, maybe a task force announcement. She turned the photograph over. There was handwriting on the back. Faded blue ink pressed deeply enough into the paper that the letters could still be felt beneath a fingertip. Mom, everything good in me started with you. Ethan. Rachel read it twice. Ethan. She looked at the young man again. Her brow tightened. Maggie noticed. That's my son, she said. Rachel lifted her eyes. He was graduating? From the FBI Academy. Tyler gave a faint scoff. Rachel looked at him. What? Nothing. You have something to say? Tyler shrugged. People carry all kinds of pictures. Maggie turned toward him. For the first time that afternoon, there was genuine hurt in her face. Not fear, not anger, hurt. That is my son. I didn't say it wasn't. You didn't have to. Rachel stared at the photograph again. FBI Academy. Ethan Brooks. Her stomach gave a small, uneasy turn. She knew that name, but before the thought could fully form, Maggie shifted beside the Ferrari. Her knee wobbled. Rachel reached for her. Mrs. Brooks? I'm all right. She was not. The warmth of the afternoon had begun pressing down harder. Her shoulder burned from the position of the cuffs. Her breathing had grown shorter, and small beads of perspiration appeared along her hairline. Tyler noticed. His response was immediate. Don't start. Maggie looked at him. Excuse me? We're almost done. Don't make this into something else. Rachel's face changed. Tyler, she doesn't look well. She looked fine 5 minutes ago. She told us she came from a medical appointment. People get nervous when they're detained. Maggie drew a slow breath. The pavement seemed to tilt beneath her. She tried to shift her weight toward the Ferrari. Her cane was still beyond reach. I need to sit down. Tyler gestured toward the patrol car. You'll sit in a minute. No. Her voice was weaker now. I mean now. Rachel stepped close. What are you feeling? Maggie looked at her. My shoulder is hurting badly. Anything else? A little lightheaded. Rachel reached for her radio. Tyler caught the movement. What are you doing? Calling medical. Hold off. Rachel stared at him. Why? Because she's escalating the situation. She's 70 years old. And the word landed badly. Even Tyler seemed to hear it after he said it. The crowd had gone almost completely silent. 30 adults. 30 witnesses. Marcus's live stream counter passed 4,000. Maggie looked across those faces, some concerned, some ashamed, some fascinated, and she wondered how so many people could look directly at one person's suffering and still wait for permission to believe it. Her legs weakened again. Rachel caught her elbow. This time Maggie did not insist she was fine. Her breath came shallow. The photograph was still in Rachel's other hand. The younger Ethan Brooks smiled from 20 years earlier. Rachel looked down at it once more. Then something clicked in her memory. A secure briefing 3 months earlier. A photograph on a large screen. The same eyes, older now, gray at the temples. A title beneath the image. She looked at Maggie, then at the photograph, then back at Maggie. But before Rachel could speak, Tyler took Maggie gently but firmly by the arm. We're moving to the cruiser. Maggie pulled in one careful breath. No. Tyler stopped. It was the first direct refusal she had given him. What did you say? Maggie raised her eyes to Rachel. Not Tyler. Rachel. Officer Moore. Yes, ma'am. I need a telephone. The way she said it made Rachel's pulse jump. Not a threat, not a boast, just certainty. Maggie glanced at the faded photograph in Rachel's hand, then back into her eyes. I need to make one call. Rachel looked again at the name written beneath the photograph. Ethan. And suddenly, She knew exactly where she had seen that face before. Rachel Moore felt the memory settle into place. 3 months earlier, she had sat in a regional task force briefing room with 20 other officers while a federal liaison reviewed new coordination protocols. A photograph had appeared on the screen behind him. Same eyes, same straight posture. Older now, silver beginning at the temples. Ethan Brooks, director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Rachel looked down at the faded graduation photograph in her hand. Then at Maggie. Her mouth went dry. "Mrs. Brooks," she said carefully, "your son's name is Ethan Brooks." Maggie's breathing remained shallow. "Yes," Tyler gave an impatient sigh. "Rachel, we don't have time for family history." Rachel turned toward him. "You need to stop." The words came out more firmly than anything she had said all afternoon. Tyler stared at her. "What?" "Stop moving her." "Excuse me?" Rachel held up the photograph. "I know who this is." Tyler barely glanced at it. "So?" Rachel lowered her voice. "This is Ethan Brooks." Maggie closed her eyes. She had not wanted the name to matter. That was the strange sorrow beneath everything happening to her. She had spent decades teaching Ethan that a title did not make a person more worthy than anyone else. She had reminded him after promotions to call the same relatives, visit the same neighborhood, remember who helped him when nobody knew his name. Now the title might be the only thing Tyler Grant respected enough to hear. Tyler looked at the picture again. A younger black man outside the FBI academy. That could be anybody. Rachel stared at him. No, it couldn't. Tyler folded his arms. You're telling me this woman just happens to be related to somebody you recognize? Maggie opened her eyes. I did not ask you to believe the photograph. Tyler looked toward her. I asked you to read my registration. The words landed harder than Rachel expected. Maggie continued, her voice thin from discomfort but steady. My son has nothing to do with whether that Ferrari belongs to me. Nobody answered. Marcus Reed's live stream had passed 6,000 viewers. The comments were moving in waves now. She's right. The paperwork already matches. Why does her son matter? Marcus stepped 1 foot closer before catching himself. Ma'am, do you need an ambulance? Maggie looked toward him. I need to sit down. Rachel moved immediately. Let's get her seated. Tyler blocked the path toward the market bench. She goes in the cruiser. Rachel's patience finally cracked. She's in distress. She's nervous. She's pale. She's detained. Those things can all be true at once. Tyler looked at her as if she had embarrassed him publicly. Maybe that was the real problem. Not Maggie, not the Ferrari, not even the paperwork. The crowd had become a mirror, and Tyler could feel himself losing control of what it reflected. He reached for Maggie's arm. Rachel put out her hand. Don't. The parking lot became completely still. Tyler slowly turned toward her. Are you refusing a direct instruction? I'm telling you she needs medical attention. I'll determine that. You're not a medic. His jaw tightened. Neither officer moved. Between them stood Maggie Brooks, 70 years old, hands cuffed behind her, shoulder burning, balance uncertain. She looked at Rachel. Officer Moore. Rachel turned immediately. I'm here. Telephone. Rachel nodded. Yes. Tyler gave a disbelieving laugh. No. Rachel looked at him. No? She could make a call after transport. She may not be fit for transport. Rachel. No. This time the word belonged to her. Not loud, not dramatic, but it was a boundary. Tyler's expression changed. Rachel reached into her pocket and removed her phone. I'm letting her make 1 call while we arrange medical evaluation. You're undermining me. I should have done it 10 minutes ago. That silenced him. Maggie watched Rachel come closer. For the first time since the patrol cars arrived, the older woman's expression softened. Not relief exactly. There was too much pain for that. But recognition. Rachel had finally crossed the empty space. "What number?" Rachel asked. Maggie gave it slowly. 10 digits. Rachel entered them. She did not recognize the number itself. That almost made her doubt what she knew. Federal directors had staff, secure lines, assistants. Numbers ordinary patrol officers did not possess. Maybe this was a private phone. Maybe the photograph meant something else. Maybe. Rachel pressed call. Tyler folded his arms. "Sir, this is ridiculous." Marcus lifted the phone higher. Nobody in the crowd spoke. The first ring sounded through Rachel's speaker. Maggie leaned lightly against the Ferrari. The sun reflected from its windshield in a bright white streak. Ring. Rachel looked at Maggie's wrists. Red marks had formed beneath the cuffs. Ring. Tyler shook his head. "Who are we calling? Her attorney?" Maggie did not answer. A breeze stirred her silver hair. The third ring began, then stopped. A man answered. "Brooks." Rachel's spine straightened. She knew the voice. Not from television, from encrypted regional briefings, recorded messages, joint operation introductions. Calm, controlled, recognizable. Maggie's face changed. All afternoon she had spoken like a woman measuring every word because one wrong tone might be used against her. That disappeared. For 1 second she was simply a mother. "Sir? Ethan?" The line went quiet. Maggie swallowed. "Honey, I need you." Rachel saw Tyler's expression flicker. The voice on the phone sharpened instantly. "Mom?" Maggie closed her eyes. "Yes." "Where are you?" "Whitmore Market." "What happened?" Maggie looked down toward the pavement. Her medication, her glasses, the peaches visible through the Ferrari window. 30 adults watching. Marcus recording. Tyler standing 3 feet away. "I was trying to leave," she said. "There was some confusion about the car." Rachel felt something twist in her chest. Some confusion, even now, even cuffed, even hurting. Maggie would not make herself larger by making anyone else smaller. Ethan's voice became quieter. "Are you hurt?" "My shoulder hurts." "Are you having trouble breathing?" "A little." A pause. When Ethan spoke again, all warmth disappeared from his voice. Not anger, something more focused. "Who is with you?" Maggie looked at Rachel. "Officer Moore is holding the phone." "Put her on." Rachel hesitated. Maggie nodded. Rachel brought the phone to her own ear. "Sir, this is Ethan Brooks. Identify yourself." Rachel's mouth went dry. "Officer Rachel Moore, Alexandria Police." "What is my mother's status?" Rachel looked at Tyler. He stared back. She could lie, soften it, call it routine, protect a colleague. She had already made that choice once today. She would not make it again. "She is detained, sir." "Is she handcuffed?" "Yes." "Why?" "Suspected vehicle theft." A silence followed. Not long, long enough. "Have you verified ownership?" Rachel looked at the registration still in Tyler's hand. "We have a registration matching her name and the vehicle." Another silence, this one colder. "Then why is she still in cuffs?" Rachel had no answer that could survive being spoken aloud. "I don't know, sir." Tyler stepped toward her. "Give me the phone." Rachel turned away. Ethan heard him. "Who was that?" "Officer Tyler Grant." He initiated the stop. "Is he the one who handcuffed her?" "Yes." Tyler's face drained slightly. He had heard enough now. Not all of it. "Enough," Rachel continued. "Sir, your mother is reporting shoulder pain and lightheadedness. I'm requesting medical assistance." "Do that now." "Yes, sir." "And Officer Moore?" "Yes." "Do not move her unless medically necessary." Rachel nodded, even though he could not see it. Understood. She handed the phone back toward Maggie's ear. Ethan's voice changed again. Mom, I'm here. I'm coming. You don't need to make a scene. Marcus nearly laughed from sheer disbelief. Even Rachel's mouth twitched. Ethan exhaled through the phone. I'll try. Maggie almost smiled. Almost. How far are you? Not far. That was all he said. Maggie knew what it meant. Ethan had been scheduled for meetings in Northern Virginia that afternoon. She had forgotten. Or perhaps some part of her had remembered when she asked for the call. Stay with Officer Moore, Ethan said. I'll be there. The call ended. For several seconds, nobody moved. Rachel lowered the phone. Tyler stared at Maggie, then at the old photograph, then at the registration. His confidence had not disappeared, but a crack had opened through it. Who exactly is your son? He asked. Maggie looked at him. The question exhausted her. He is Ethan. That's not what I asked. It's the answer you're getting. Marcus turned his face away to hide a brief smile. Rachel reached for her radio. Dispatch, request EMS to Whitmore Market. Elderly female detainee, conscious and breathing, reporting significant shoulder pain and lightheadedness. Tyler stepped closer. You're really calling EMS? Rachel looked directly at him. Yes. For this? For her. Those two words changed something in the crowd. A woman lowered her phone. An older man removed his sunglasses. The spectacle was beginning to become shame. Tyler looked around, as if searching for the authority he had possessed 10 minutes earlier. Then his radio crackled. Unit 12, be advised. Command is attempting contact regarding your location. Tyler froze. Rachel heard it too. A second transmission followed almost immediately. All units near Whitmore Market. Maintain location. Supervisory personnel responding. Marcus's live stream comments exploded. What just happened? Command. Who did she call? Tyler looked toward the street. Nothing yet. Just ordinary traffic passing between the old brick buildings. Then, faintly, several blocks away, a set of lights appeared, not racing wildly, moving quickly and deliberately. Rachel looked down at the graduation photograph one more time. The younger Ethan Brooks stood beside Maggie, smiling beneath a bright Virginia sky from another lifetime. On the back were the words she had already read. Mom, everything good in me started with you. Ethan. Rachel looked toward the approaching lights. Tyler did too, and for the first time all afternoon, Officer Tyler Grant looked afraid that the truth might arrive before he could explain it away. The lights grew brighter at the end of the block. Tyler's hand moved toward his radio. Dispatch, confirm who's responding. Static answered first, then a voice. Unit 12, supervisory response is en route. Hold your position. Tyler glanced at Rachel. Why is command responding to a vehicle stop? Rachel said nothing. She already knew. The phone call had lasted less than 3 minutes, but the parking lot no longer belonged to Tyler's version of events. Maggie leaned against the Ferrari, breathing carefully through the ache in her shoulder. Rachel stayed close enough to catch her if her knees weakened again, one hand hovering near her elbow without touching unless needed. Marcus Reed kept filming. His live stream counter climbed past 7,000. The crowd had changed. 20 minutes earlier, people had watched with the detached curiosity of strangers seeing trouble that belonged to someone else. Now they whispered in small groups, replaying what they had heard. Did she say FBI? That officer said Director Brooks. Is that really his mother? A woman near the market entrance lowered her phone completely. Another man looked toward Maggie and then down at the pavement, suddenly uncomfortable with how long he had been recording without saying a word. Maggie noticed all of it. She wished she didn't. Tyler stepped toward Rachel. Take the cuffs off. Rachel looked at him. What? I said remove them. The words came quickly now. Too quickly. A few minutes earlier, Tyler had insisted Maggie remain restrained, despite the registration, the matching vehicle information, the medical complaint, and Rachel's objections. Now his urgency had changed. Maggie understood why. So now you believe me? She asked. Tyler looked at her. This situation is being reassessed. That isn't what I asked. He avoided her eyes. Rachel slowly reached for her cuff key. Maggie stopped her. Wait. Rachel froze. Tyler frowned. Ma'am, we're trying to release you. Maggie looked toward Marcus's phone, then at the other cameras surrounding them. No, she said. Officer Moore was trying to release me 5 minutes ago. Rachel lowered her eyes. Maggie continued. You were not. Tyler's face tightened. I'm correcting the situation. Because the facts changed? He said nothing. The registration hasn't changed, Maggie said. The VIN hasn't changed. My name hasn't changed. Her voice never rose. That phone call changed something. The words landed across the parking lot. Tyler looked around. He knew the cameras were catching everything. Mrs. Brooks, I'm attempting to de-escalate. Maggie gave him a tired look. You had every opportunity to do that before you knew who answered my telephone. Rachel swallowed. Marcus's phone remained perfectly still. Tyler took a breath. Officer Moore, remove the cuffs. This time Maggie did not object. Rachel stepped behind her carefully. I'm going to support your arm while I unlock these. Thank you. The key entered the first lock. Before Rachel could turn it, Maggie winced. Easy. I've got you. The first cuff opened. Maggie slowly lowered her right arm. Pain moved across her face. Rachel unlocked the second. When the steel came away, deep red impressions circled Maggie's wrists. Marcus whispered something under his breath. The woman near the market entrance covered her mouth. Rachel looked at the marks and went pale. I'm sorry. Maggie looked at her. There were many things Rachel could have meant. For the cuffs, for waiting, for knowing. Maggie simply nodded. Get my cane, please. Rachel immediately walked to the Ferrari. She retrieved the wooden cane from beside the passenger seat and placed it in Maggie's hand. Maggie wrapped her fingers around the familiar handle, her balance steadied. Not completely. Enough. Tyler bent to collect the belongings scattered on the pavement. Maggie watched him reach for the registration. Leave that. He stopped. Rachel picked it up instead. Then the medication, the glasses, finally the faded photograph. Rachel held it for a moment before giving it back. Maggie looked down at the younger Ethan standing beside her. The photograph had been taken on a hot Virginia afternoon more than 2 decades earlier. Ethan had completed his FBI Academy training as a grown man, already carrying more responsibility than Maggie ever wanted him to carry alone. James had taken the picture. Maggie remembered him complaining that the sun was in his eyes. She remembered Ethan teasing him. She remembered all 3 of them laughing afterward. For 1 second, the parking lot disappeared. Then a fresh wave of lightheadedness brought it back. Rachel saw her sway. Mrs. Brooks? I'm all right. No, ma'am, you're not. Maggie almost argued, then stopped. Rachel was right. An ambulance siren could be heard now, farther away than the approaching official vehicles, but getting closer. Maggie slipped the photograph into her handbag. Tyler watched her. Your son really is the FBI director. It sounded less like a question than a man speaking to himself. Maggie looked at him. My son was Ethan before he was anything else. Tyler glanced toward the street. The first dark government vehicle turned the corner. Traffic slowed around it. Behind it came another vehicle, then a local command SUV. No wild convoy, no theatrical rush, just 3 vehicles moving with unmistakable purpose. People in the crowd stepped backward. Tyler's breathing changed. He straightened his uniform, adjusted his belt, checked the position of his body camera. Small movements. Nervous movements. Marcus noticed. "So now everything matters," he said quietly. Tyler shot him a look. Marcus did not back down this time. The camera, the cuffs, her name. Now it all matters. "Marcus," Maggie said softly. He stopped. She gave him the faintest smile. "Keep recording." Marcus nodded. "Yes, ma'am." That was enough. The lead vehicle entered the Whitmore market lot. Rachel stood straighter. Tyler did too. Maggie did not. She simply leaned on James's old cane beside James's red Ferrari, exhausted from proving something that should never have required proof. The vehicle stopped. For several seconds, nobody opened the door. Tyler seemed almost relieved by the delay. Then Rachel's phone rang again. She looked at the screen. Private number. Her eyes lifted to Maggie. "I think it's him." "Answer it." Rachel did. "Officer Moore." Ethan's voice came through. "I'm at the market entrance. Is my mother conscious?" "Yes, sir." "Are the cuffs off?" Rachel looked at Maggie's wrists. "Yes." "Medical?" "On the way." "Good." He paused, then asked the question Rachel had been dreading. "Did ownership get verified?" "Yes." "When?" Rachel looked toward Tyler. He was staring at her. "Before your mother called you." Silence. Ethan spoke slowly. "And she remained detained after that." Rachel closed her eyes. "Yes." Another silence. This one felt heavier. "Thank you for telling me the truth." Rachel opened her eyes. "Sir?" "I'll be there in a moment." The call ended. Rachel lowered the phone. Tyler stepped closer. "What did he say?" Rachel looked at him. "He asked when we verified the registration." Tyler's face lost color. "And?" "I told him." His jaw tightened. "You didn't need to phrase it like that." "I told him what happened." "You don't know everything that happened before you got here." "I know enough." Tyler leaned closer. "This is going to turn into something it doesn't need to be." Rachel stared at him. "It already became something it didn't need to be." He stepped back, as if she had struck him. Marcus's camera caught every word. The first dark vehicle door opened. A man in a suit stepped out and surveyed the lot. Security. A second door opened. Another adult agent emerged. Then the rear door of the lead vehicle moved. Maggie's fingers tightened around the cane. For all the certainty she had shown Tyler, this was the moment she had wanted to avoid. Ethan would see her wrists. He would see the medication on the pavement. He would see the crowd, and he would blame himself for not being there sooner, even though none of this belonged to him. Maggie knew her son. His anger would come second. Guilt would come first. The rear door opened fully. Ethan Brooks stepped onto the pavement. 52 years old, dark suit, federal credentials clipped near his waist, silver at his temples now, the same eyes as the younger man in Maggie's photograph. Tyler recognized him immediately. So did Rachel. Several people in the crowd whispered his name. Ethan took 2 steps. His gaze went first to the Ferrari, then the crowd, then Rachel, then Tyler, and finally Maggie. Everything in his face changed. He saw the cane, the pale strain around her mouth, the red marks circling both wrists. For 1 second, the FBI director disappeared. There was only a son standing across a parking lot from his mother. "Maggie?" No, the word caught inside him. His face broke. "Mom?" Maggie's eyes filled. Ethan began to run. The lights grew brighter at the end of the block. Tyler's hand moved toward his radio. "Dispatch, confirm who's responding." Static answered first, then a voice. "Unit 12, supervisory response is en route. Hold your position." Tyler glanced at Rachel. "Why is command responding to a vehicle stop?" Rachel said nothing. She already knew. The phone call had lasted less than 3 minutes, but the parking lot no longer belonged to Tyler's version of events. Maggie leaned against the Ferrari, breathing carefully through the ache in her shoulder. Rachel stayed close enough to catch her if her knees weakened again, one hand hovering near her elbow without touching unless needed. Marcus Reed kept filming. His live stream counter climbed past 7,000. The crowd had changed. 20 minutes earlier, people had watched with the detached curiosity of strangers seeing trouble that belonged to someone else. Now they whispered in small groups, replaying what they had heard. Did she say FBI? That officer said Director Brooks. Is that really his mother? A woman near the market entrance lowered her phone completely. Another man looked toward Maggie and then down at the pavement, suddenly uncomfortable with how long he had been recording without saying a word. Maggie noticed all of it. She wished she didn't. Tyler stepped toward Rachel. Take the cuffs off. Rachel looked at him. What? I said remove them. The words came quickly now, too quickly. A few minutes earlier, Tyler had insisted Maggie remain restrained despite the registration, the matching vehicle information, the medical complaint, and Rachel's objections. Now his urgency had changed. Maggie understood why. So now you believe me? She asked. Tyler looked at her. This situation is being reassessed. That isn't what I asked. He avoided her eyes. Rachel slowly reached for her cuff key. Maggie stopped her. Wait. Rachel froze. Tyler frowned. Ma'am, we're trying to release you. Maggie looked toward Marcus's phone, then at the other cameras surrounding them. No, she said. Officer Moore was trying to release me 5 minutes ago. Rachel lowered her eyes. Maggie continued. You were not. Tyler's face tightened. I'm correcting the situation. Because the facts changed? He said nothing. The registration hasn't changed, Maggie said. The VIN hasn't changed. My name hasn't changed. Her voice never rose. That phone call changed something. The words landed across the parking lot. Tyler looked around. He knew the cameras were catching everything. Mrs. Brooks, I am attempting to de-escalate. Maggie gave him a tired look. You had every opportunity to do that before you knew who answered my telephone. Rachel swallowed. Marcus's phone remained perfectly still. Tyler took a breath. Officer Moore, remove the cuffs. This time Maggie did not object. Rachel stepped behind her carefully. I'm going to support your arm while I unlock these. Thank you. The key entered the first lock. Before Rachel could turn it, Maggie winced. Easy. I've got you. The first cuff opened. Maggie slowly lowered her right arm. Pain moved across her face, while Rachel unlocked the second. When the steel came away, deep red impressions circled Maggie's wrists. Marcus whispered something under his breath. The woman near the market entrance covered her mouth. Rachel looked at the marks and went pale. I'm sorry. Maggie looked at her. There were many things Rachel could have meant. For the cuffs, for waiting, for knowing. Maggie simply nodded. Get my cane, please. Rachel immediately walked to the Ferrari. She retrieved the wooden cane from beside the passenger seat and placed it in Maggie's hand. Maggie wrapped her fingers around the familiar handle, her balance steadied. Not completely. Enough. Tyler bent to collect the belongings scattered on the pavement. Maggie watched him reach for the registration. Leave that. He stopped. Rachel picked it up instead. Then the medication, the glasses. Finally, the faded photograph. Rachel held it for a moment before giving it back. Maggie looked down at the younger Ethan standing beside her. The photograph had been taken on a hot Virginia afternoon more than 2 decades earlier. Ethan had completed his FBI Academy training as a grown man, already carrying more responsibility than Maggie ever wanted him to carry alone. James had taken the picture. Maggie remembered him complaining that the sun was in his eyes. She remembered Ethan teasing him. She remembered all three of them laughing afterward. For 1 second, the parking lot disappeared. Then a fresh wave of lightheadedness brought it back. Rachel saw her sway. "Mrs. Brooks? I'm all right." "No, ma'am, you're not," Maggie almost argued, then stopped. Rachel was right. An ambulance siren could be heard now, farther away than the approaching official vehicles, but getting closer. Maggie slipped the photograph into her handbag. Tyler watched her. "Your son really is the FBI director." It sounded less like a question than a man speaking to himself. Maggie looked at him. "My son was Ethan before he was anything else." Tyler glanced toward the street. The first dark government vehicle turned the corner. Traffic slowed around it. Behind it came another vehicle, then a local command SUV. No wild convoy, no theatrical rush. Just 3 vehicles moving with unmistakable purpose. People in the crowd stepped backward. Tyler's breathing changed. He straightened his uniform, adjusted his belt, checked the position of his body camera. Small movements, nervous movements. Marcus noticed. "So now everything matters," he said quietly. Tyler shot him a look. Marcus did not back down this time. The camera, the cuffs, her name. Now it all matters. "Marcus," Maggie said softly. He stopped. She gave him the faintest smile. "Keep recording." Marcus nodded. "Yes, ma'am." That was enough. The lead vehicle entered the Whitmore Market lot. Rachel stood straighter. Tyler did too. Maggie did not. She simply leaned on James's old cane beside James's red Ferrari, exhausted from proving something that should never have required proof. The vehicle stopped. For several seconds, nobody opened the door. Tyler seemed almost relieved by the delay. Then Rachel's phone rang again. She looked at the screen. Private number. Her eyes lifted to Maggie. "I think it's him." "Answer it," Rachel did. "Officer Moore," Ethan's voice came through. "I'm at the market entrance. Is my mother conscious?" "Yes, sir." "Are the cuffs off?" Rachel looked at Maggie's wrists. "Yes." "Medical?" "On the way." "Good." He paused, then asked the question Rachel had been dreading. "Did ownership get verified?" "Yes." "When?" Rachel looked toward Tyler. He was staring at her. "Before your mother called you." Silence. Ethan spoke slowly. "And she remained detained after that?" Rachel closed her eyes. "Yes." Another silence. This one felt heavier. "Thank you for telling me the truth." Rachel opened her eyes. "Sir, I'll be there in a moment." The call ended. Rachel lowered the phone. Tyler stepped closer. "What did he say?" Rachel looked at him. "He asked when we verified the registration." Tyler's face lost color. "And?" "I told him." His jaw tightened. "You didn't need to phrase it like that." "I told him what happened." "You don't know everything that happened before you got here." "I know enough." Tyler leaned closer. "This is going to turn into something it doesn't need to be." Rachel stared at him. "It already became something it didn't need to be." He stepped back, as if she had struck him. Marcus's camera caught every word. The first dark vehicle door opened. A man in a suit stepped out and surveyed the lot. Security. A second door opened. Another adult agent emerged. Then the rear door of the lead vehicle moved. Maggie's fingers tightened around the cane. For all the certainty she had shown Tyler, this was the moment she had wanted to avoid. Ethan would see her wrists. He would see the medication on the pavement. He would see the crowd. And he would blame himself for not being there sooner, even though none of this belonged to him. Maggie knew her son. His anger would come second. Guilt would come first. The rear door opened fully. Ethan Brooks stepped onto the pavement. 52 years old, dark suit, Federal credentials clipped near his waist, silver at his temples now. The same eyes as the younger man in Maggie's photograph. Tyler recognized him immediately. So did Rachel. Several people in the crowd whispered his name. Ethan took 2 steps. His gaze went first to the Ferrari, then the crowd, then Rachel, then Tyler, and finally Maggie. Everything in his face changed. He saw the cane, the pale strain around her mouth, the red marks circling both wrists. For 1 second, the FBI director disappeared. There was only a son standing across a parking lot from his mother. Maggie? No. The word caught inside him. His face broke. Mom? Maggie's eyes filled. Ethan began to run. He crossed the parking lot faster than anyone expected. Not like a federal official arriving at a scene. Like a son who had just seen his mother hurt. The security detail behind him moved automatically, but Ethan barely seemed aware of them. His attention never left Maggie. Mom! His voice broke on the word. Maggie tried to straighten. I'm all right. No, you're not. He reached her and stopped just short of touching her, as if afraid even his hands might hurt. Then he saw her wrists, the red cuff marks, the faint swelling, the tremor in her fingers where they gripped James's cane. Something in Ethan's face hardened and shattered at the same time. He took her hands carefully. Who did this? Maggie looked at him. Ethan. Who? His voice was low now. Too low. The kind of voice Maggie knew from years ago, when he was younger and angry and trying to control it. She squeezed his fingers. Look at me first. He did. I'm here, she said. Ethan swallowed. Behind him, the parking lot had gone completely silent. Tyler Grant stood several yards away. Rachel Moore beside him. Marcus Reed still filming. 30 adults who had watched the scene unfold now watched something entirely different. The man they recognized from national broadcasts was kneeling beside the woman they had spent the last half hour treating like a spectacle. Ethan looked over Maggie's shoulder. James's Ferrari, the open passenger door, the peaches, the registration in Rachel's hand, the old photograph resting partly out of Maggie's handbag. He stared at the photograph. His own younger face looked back at him from another life. Academy graduation. James behind the camera. Maggie beside him. For 1 second, Ethan closed his eyes. When he opened them, the grief was gone. Only control remained. Officer Moore. Rachel stepped forward immediately. Yes, sir. What happened? She looked at Tyler, then Maggie, then back at Ethan. Sir, the initial call was for a possible stolen vehicle. Officer Grant arrived first. Your mother was detained. I arrived shortly afterward. Was ownership verified? Yes. When? Before she called you. Ethan's eyes moved to Tyler. That was the first time he truly looked at him. Tyler straightened. Sir, if I may explain. Ethan raised one hand. Not aggressively. Enough. Tyler stopped. Ethan stood slowly. Maggie watched him rise and felt the air change. Her son was back inside the uniform he did not wear, but somehow carried everywhere. Authority settled over him quietly. No shouting, no threats. That made Tyler more nervous than anger would have. Ethan pointed toward the registration. Officer Moore, may I see that? Rachel handed it over. He read the name. Margaret Brooks. He checked the vehicle information. Then the plate. 3 seconds, maybe 4. He looked up. This is her car. Tyler nodded too quickly. Yes, sir, we established that. Ethan's gaze stayed on him. You established that and kept her detained. Sir, there were concerns about the authenticity of the paperwork. What concerns? The initial caller reported a possible theft and possible weapon. Did you find a weapon? No, sir. Did my mother threaten anyone? No, sir. Did you run the plate? Tyler hesitated. That hesitation answered more than words. Ethan waited. No, sir, not before the detention. Marcus's camera captured the moment. A murmur moved through the crowd. Ethan looked toward the phones, then back at Tyler. What evidence did you have that the Ferrari was stolen? The caller's report. What did the caller see? Tyler opened his mouth. Nothing came. He had not asked. He had not needed to. The description had been enough. Older black woman, expensive car. Suspicion had done the rest. Ethan's jaw tightened. Maggie saw it. Ethan! He turned. She shook her head once. Not yet. He understood. An ambulance siren approached from the street. Ethan looked back at Rachel. You called medical? Yes, sir. Thank you. Rachel's shoulders dropped slightly. The gratitude hurt more than a reprimand. Tyler stepped forward. Director Brooks, I understand how this looks, but I was responding to an active call. If I had known she was your mother. Maggie's face changed. Ethan did too, but Maggie spoke first. That's enough. Tyler stopped. She took one careful step toward him. Ethan instinctively moved with her. Maggie held up her free hand. I can stand. He stayed close anyway. Tyler looked at her. For the first time all afternoon, he seemed unsure where to put his hands. Mrs. Brooks, I didn't mean... You said if you had known. Yes, ma'am. Maggie nodded slowly. That is what troubles me. The ambulance turned into the lot. No one looked away. Tyler swallowed. Ma'am? You think the mistake was not knowing who my son is? I'm saying the situation would have been handled differently. Maggie stared at him. That's the problem. The words carried without effort. You shouldn't have needed to know. A silence followed so complete the distant market music could be heard through the automatic doors. Maggie lifted one wrist. The red cuff line showed clearly. Would these have hurt less if my son worked at a gas station? Tyler's face went pale. Would my registration have become more real if nobody important answered my phone call? He looked down. Maggie continued. If I were nobody's mother, would you still be standing here explaining why you did not read the truth when it was in your hand? No answer. Rachel's eyes filled. Marcus lowered his phone slightly, then raised it again. Not for spectacle now, for record. Ethan looked at his mother with something close to awe. He had heard her speak at churches, retirement dinners, neighborhood meetings. He had never heard her sound like this. Not angry, wounded, certain. Tyler tried again. Mrs. Brooks, I made a judgment call. Maggie nodded. Yes. That's exactly what you did. The paramedics approached with a stretcher. Ethan moved toward them. My mother has shoulder pain, lightheadedness, and was restrained behind her back after reporting a medical limitation. One of the paramedics nodded. We'll check her now. Tyler shifted as if to follow. Ethan looked at him. Stay where you are. The words were calm. Tyler stopped instantly. Maggie heard it. So did everyone else. One man gives an order and the other obeys. That was power. She looked at Ethan. Son, he turned. Don't. His brow furrowed. Don't what? Don't let me watch you become him. The sentence hit harder than anything Tyler had heard. Ethan stared at her. Maggie reached for his hand. You are angry. Yes. You have every right to be. His voice tightened. He put you in cuffs after he knew the car was yours. I know. He ignored your medical condition. I know. I know. She squeezed his hand. But power is still power when you're the one holding it. Ethan looked away. Toward Tyler. Toward the crowd. Toward Marcus's camera. Then back at Maggie. What do you want me to do? Her answer came immediately. Help me first. The anger left his face. Not completely. Enough. He nodded. Yes, ma'am. A paramedic guided Maggie toward the stretcher. She lowered herself carefully. Ethan stayed beside her. Rachel stepped closer. Director Brooks, he looked up. I need to tell you something. What? I knew something was wrong before I acted. Tyler turned toward her sharply. Rachel did not look at him. I should have stopped this sooner. Maggie looked at her. Rachel's voice trembled. I'm sorry. Maggie studied her for a long moment. Then tell the truth about it. Rachel nodded. I will. Ethan heard that. He straightened. Officer Moore, preserve every recording from this scene. Body cameras, dispatch audio, vehicle data, everything. Yes, sir. Then he stopped himself. His expression changed. No. Rachel blinked. Ethan turned toward one of the senior local supervisors who had just arrived. This involves my mother. I will not direct the investigation. The supervisor nodded. Understood, Ethan continued. Preserve the evidence under your own authority. Notify internal affairs and independent counsel. I want no federal interference from me or anyone acting on my behalf. Tyler stared at him. Maggie did too. A small smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. That was her son. Ethan looked at Tyler. If there is misconduct here, your own process will find it. Tyler swallowed. And if there isn't, then the evidence will show that too, Marcus whispered from behind his phone. That's the difference. Ethan heard him. He looked over. You're the one who recorded this? Marcus nodded. Yes, sir. Did you speak up? Marcus hesitated. A little. Maggie corrected him from the stretcher. He was the only one. The crowd shifted. Several people lowered their eyes. Ethan looked across them. 30 adults. 30 witnesses. One voice. His expression softened. Thank you. Marcus nodded, overwhelmed. The paramedics began checking Maggie's blood pressure. Tyler stood apart now, no longer at the center of anything. His badge was still on his chest, his authority still technically intact. But the power he had held over the scene had disappeared. One of the local supervisors approached him. Officer Grant, step away from duty pending review. Hand me your radio. Tyler looked toward Ethan. Ethan did not intervene. Tyler looked at Maggie. She watched silently. He removed the radio. Then his duty weapon was secured according to department procedure. No spectacle, no revenge, just process. For the first time that afternoon, Tyler experienced what Maggie had been asking for from the beginning. Verification, facts, rules applied before conclusions. As the paramedics prepared to move Maggie, Ethan bent beside her. I'm riding with you. You have meetings. He stared at her. Mom. She almost smiled. All right. He reached toward the passenger seat of the Ferrari. The paper bag of peaches had tipped over. 2 peaches had rolled onto the floorboard. Ethan picked one up. James's favorite. His face softened. You came here for these. And coffee. Of course you did. She touched his sleeve. Take the car home later. I will. And don't scratch it. Ethan laughed once. A broken, relieved sound. Dad would come back and haunt me. He would. The stretcher began rolling toward the ambulance. Maggie looked back. Tyler stood alone beside the red Ferrari. Rachel was speaking to the supervisor. Marcus was still recording. The crowd had finally stopped behaving like an audience. Some looked ashamed. Some looked shaken. One woman began picking up the groceries Maggie had dropped. But the story was not finished. Not even close. Because across the lot, Diane Keller sat frozen inside her gray SUV, watching officers secure the scene and wondering if anyone remembered who had made the call. And inside the dispatch center, every word of that call was still waiting on a recorded line. The ambulance doors closed with Maggie inside. Ethan stood beside them for one last second, his palm resting flat against the metal. "I'll follow right behind you." Maggie's voice came faintly through the open window. "Don't forget the peaches." He smiled despite himself. "I won't." Then the ambulance pulled away. The sound of its siren faded toward Duke Street, taking the center of the crisis with it. What remained in the Whitmore Market parking lot felt different, colder, more official. Local supervisors began separating witnesses. Rachel Moore stood beside a patrol SUV giving her first account. Marcus Reed saved 2 copies of his live stream before handing his phone number to an investigator. Tyler Grant had been moved away from the Ferrari and was now standing alone near the curb without his radio. No one had arrested him. No one had publicly humiliated him. That mattered. Ethan had made sure of it. Before leaving for the hospital, he had repeated the same instruction to the senior supervisor. "Facts first. My title does not change the process." Then he had looked once toward Tyler. "My mother's title shouldn't have changed it either." Tyler had dropped his eyes. Now Diane watched all of this through the windshield. Her hands were locked around the steering wheel. She told herself she could leave. She had done nothing wrong. She had called because something looked suspicious. That was what responsible citizens were supposed to do. She repeated the thought until it almost sounded true. Then Marcus turned his camera slightly toward the gray SUV. Diane's stomach tightened. She remembered him. He had been near the delivery van before Tyler arrived. Had he been recording that early? Probably not. Still, she did not like the way he was looking at her. Diane started the engine. The local supervisor noticed. "Ma'am?" She froze. An officer approached the driver's side. "Could you stay for a moment, please?" Diane lowered the window 3 inches. "Why?" "We're identifying witnesses." "I didn't witness anything important." The officer looked down at a tablet in his hand. "Are you Diane Keller?" Her face changed. "How do you know my name?" "You placed the original 911 call." The words seemed to fill the SUV. Diane unlocked the door reluctantly and stepped out. She wore cream slacks, a pale blue blouse, and expensive sunglasses that she immediately pushed into her hair. "I did what any normal person would do." The officer did not argue. "We just need your statement." "I already gave my statement." Dispatch recorded the call. For the first time, Diane stopped speaking. Across the parking lot, Tyler heard that. So did Rachel. The call, the thing that had started everything. Tyler looked toward the supervisor. "What exactly did she report?" "We'll determine that." Tyler's face tightened. Diane crossed her arms. "I said I thought the car might be stolen." "Did you see anyone break into it?" "No." "Did you see anyone force the lock?" "No." "Did you see Mrs. Brooks damage the vehicle?" "No, but that doesn't mean—" "Did you see a weapon?" Diane's lips parted. She looked toward Tyler, then Rachel, then Marcus. "No." The officer paused. "You told dispatch she might be armed." "I said she could be." "Based on what?" Diane's voice sharpened. "She had a bag." Marcus lowered his phone. For once, even he seemed too stunned to comment. Rachel looked at the worn handbag now sitting safely inside an evidence collection area beside Maggie's recovered belongings. Medication, glasses, registration, an old photograph. Nothing else. Diane looked around and realized no one was nodding along with her. Her defensiveness rose. "I was trying to protect someone's property." Rachel spoke before she could stop herself. "It was her property." Diane turned. "Well, we know that now." Rachel stared at her. "We could have known it then." The words hung between them. Tyler looked away. That sentence belonged to him too. A senior investigator arrived from the department's internal affairs unit. A 46-year-old woman named Karen Lewis. She carried no visible frustration, no outrage, only a recorder and a narrow black notebook. Officer Moore. Rachel straightened. Yes, ma'am. You're willing to provide a full statement now? Yes. Without Officer Grant present? Rachel looked toward Tyler. Yes. Tyler's head lifted. Rachel. She met his eyes. Something painful passed between them. Not betrayal, the end of avoidance. I should have done more earlier, she said. I'm not going to make the same mistake in the report. Tyler stared at her, then looked down again. Marcus gave Karen Lewis his contact information and confirmed that his stream had captured nearly the entire encounter. From when? Before the cuffs. Audio? Yes. Unedited? Yes. Karen nodded. Preserve the original. Marcus glanced toward Tyler. I already did. The investigator looked at him for a second. Good. Diane's frustration deepened. This is getting ridiculous. I made a phone call. I didn't handcuff anybody. No, Karen said. Her tone remained even. You didn't. Diane seemed relieved. Then Karen continued. But we need to understand whether you knowingly provided information you had no factual basis to provide. I was concerned. Concern is not the same thing as observation. Diane's face reddened. I'm not a police officer. How am I supposed to know the difference? Karen looked at her. You told dispatch a woman might be armed. I said might. After admitting you had not seen a weapon. Diane fell silent. The crowd that had once gathered around Maggie was mostly dispersing now. But a few people remained. Not recording anymore. Listening. The embarrassment Diane had expected Maggie to feel had begun circling back toward her. At Alexandria General Hospital, Maggie lay beneath a thin white blanket while a monitor pulsed steadily beside her bed. Her shoulder was inflamed. Her blood pressure was elevated. Nothing catastrophic, the physician had said, but enough stress had been placed on her body that she would remain under observation. Ethan sat beside her. His jacket hung over the back of the chair. Without it, he looked younger somehow, not less like the man people saw behind podiums, more like James's son-in-law still learning how to sit patiently in a hospital room. Maggie looked at him. You're angry. Yes. Still? Yes. She smiled faintly. At least you're honest. Ethan leaned forward. I keep seeing the marks on your wrists. They'll fade. That isn't the point. I know. He looked toward the window. Late afternoon sunlight rested against the glass. I could make one call and have half the government asking questions. Maggie's expression changed. That is exactly why you won't. Ethan looked at her. She reached for his hand. You already did the right thing. I don't feel like it. Doing right and feeling satisfied are different things. He gave a tired laugh. That sounds like something you used to tell me when I was 25. I told you because you needed to hear it. I still do. For a while they sat quietly. Then Ethan's phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen. A message from the local supervisor. 911 audio secured. Independent review opened. Officer Grant administratively relieved from field duty. Caller statement under review. Ethan locked the phone. Maggie noticed. What? They have the 911 recording. And? They're reviewing it. Good. You don't want to hear it? Maggie thought about Diane in the gray SUV. She had recognized her. Not well. Enough. A woman who had lived nearby for years and had never once asked Maggie a question about the Ferrari. No, Maggie said. Not yet. Ethan studied her. I don't understand how you're this calm. Maggie looked toward the peaches on the bedside table. Ethan had gone back for them after all. Only 2 had survived without bruises. Because if I let every person who has underestimated me decide what kind of woman I become afterward, I would have stopped recognizing myself a long time ago. Ethan's eyes lowered. That officer told me if he had known who you were, I remember. That sentence keeps bothering me. It should. Maggie picked up one peach and turned it slowly in her hand. He thinks my importance came from you. Ethan's jaw tightened. He's wrong. I know. She looked at him. But make sure what happens next proves it. His eyes lifted. How? By treating me like any other person who deserved the truth to matter. Ethan sat back. Maggie continued. No favors, no revenge, no phone calls behind closed doors. That's hard. Good. A faint smile touched her face. Hard things are usually where character lives. Back at Whitmore Market, Karen Lewis stood beside a department vehicle listening to the first minute of Diane's recorded 911 call through an earpiece. Her expression did not change, but when the audio reached Diane's words, she just doesn't look like the owner. Karen slowly looked across the parking lot, at the Ferrari, at Tyler, at Diane. Then the recording continued. No weapon observed, no forced entry, no threat. Then Diane's escalation. She may be armed. Karen removed the earpiece. Diane stared at her. What? Karen closed the recorder. We're going to need a complete formal statement from you. Diane's face fell. Am I in trouble? Karen did not answer the question. Someone will explain your rights and the process before we continue. Diane's confidence finally disappeared. Tyler watched from several yards away. His own body camera footage had already been secured. So had Rachel's. So had Marcus's live stream. For the first time, the story no longer belonged to the loudest person at the scene. It belonged to evidence. At the hospital, Ethan's phone vibrated again. This time, he did not look at it. Maggie still held his hand. What do you want from all this? He asked. She looked toward the two peaches beneath the hospital light. Not what everybody thinks. What do you mean? They're going to want punishment. Ethan said nothing. They'll want somebody fired, somebody charged, somebody ruined. Maybe some of that will be deserved. She paused. But that won't answer the question. What question? Maggie looked at him. What happens to the next woman who doesn't have you to call? Ethan's face went still. Maggie squeezed his hand. I want you to think about her. Outside, evening began settling over Alexandria. And while investigators prepared to listen to every second of the call that started the disaster, Maggie Brooks was already thinking past the people who had hurt her. She was thinking about the stranger who would come next. By the next morning, the parking lot at Whitmore Market had returned to normal. Shopping carts rattled across the pavement. Delivery trucks came and went. The red space where James's Ferrari had been parked sat empty beneath the Virginia sun. But nothing about the case was normal anymore. Marcus Reed's video had traveled far beyond Alexandria overnight. Millions had watched Maggie stand beside her own car while an officer ignored the registration in front of him. News crews gathered outside police headquarters. Reporters waited near the hospital entrance. Commentators argued about Tyler Grant, Diane Keller, Rachel Moore, the silent crowd, and the moment Ethan Brooks ran toward his mother. The title everyone seemed to want was simple: FBI Director's mother wrongly detained. Maggie hated it. She lay propped against two hospital pillows, while Evelyn Carter, 74, sat beside the window peeling the paper label from a bottle of water. They keep calling you the FBI Director's mother, Evelyn said. I noticed. As if you didn't have a name before Ethan got promoted. Maggie smiled. That is exactly what bothers me. Evelyn looked toward the television mounted on the wall. It was muted, but Maggie's face filled half the screen beneath a red breaking news banner. Want me to turn it off? Please. Evelyn did. The room became quiet again. Maggie exhaled. Her shoulder still ached. Bruising had formed around both wrists. The doctor had cleared her from anything immediately dangerous, but he wanted one more day of observation. Evelyn glanced toward the peaches Ethan had left on the windowsill. You really went through all this over fruit? Maggie laughed softly. James always was expensive. He would be furious. He would be pacing the hallway asking why nobody had checked the VIN. That sounds like him. For a moment they both smiled. Then Evelyn's expression softened. He would also be proud of you. Maggie looked down. I didn't do anything. You stayed yourself. That shouldn't count as bravery. Sometimes it does. A knock sounded. Ethan stepped inside. He wore no jacket today, just a white shirt with the sleeves rolled once at the forearms. Am I interrupting? Evelyn stood. Perfect timing. I was just leaving before your mother makes me reorganize her medicine cabinet from a hospital bed. I heard that, Maggie said. You were supposed to. Evelyn kissed Maggie's cheek, squeezed Ethan's shoulder, and left. Ethan waited until the door closed. Then he pulled the visitor chair closer. They completed the first round of interviews. Maggie studied his face. Phew, you're not involved. I'm not. Good. I was briefed only because reporters are asking the Bureau for comment. And? We're giving them none beyond confirming that you are my mother and that the local investigation is independent. Maggie nodded approvingly. What did they find? Ethan hesitated. The 911 call is worse than I thought. Maggie looked toward the window. He continued. Diane Keller repeatedly admitted she did not see you break into the Ferrari. She said she never saw a weapon. Dispatch asked her more than once what made her suspicious. Maggie already knew the answer. Still, she asked, what did she say? Ethan's voice lowered. She said you didn't look like the owner. Maggie closed her eyes, not because the words surprised her, because they didn't. After a while, she asked, and Tyler? Internal Affairs reviewed the body camera footage through the point where your ownership documents were recovered. Ethan leaned back. He saw your name. Yes. He saw the matching vehicle information. Yes. He still kept you restrained. Yes. Maggie looked at him. That's the part that matters. Ethan frowned. Not the call? The call matters. Diane has to answer for what she said. She paused. But Tyler had chances she didn't control. Ethan went still. Maggie continued. He could have run the plate before touching me. He could have read the registration when it fell out. He could have listened to Rachel. He could have listened when I said I was hurting. She looked down at the fading marks around her wrists. The lie brought him there. His choices kept him there. Ethan nodded slowly. I agree. There is another choice, too. Rachel. Yes. Ethan folded his hands. She gave a complete statement. Maggie waited. She told investigators she believed something was wrong shortly after arriving. She admitted she deferred to Tyler because he had initiated the stop, and because she did not want to undermine him publicly. Maggie's eyes grew sad. She was afraid of being wrong. Probably. So she let me carry the risk instead. Ethan had no answer. Maggie looked toward the muted television. That is how bad systems survive, Ethan. Not because everybody inside them is cruel. Her voice remained quiet. Because enough decent people decide this one moment is not worth the trouble. Across town, Rachel Moore sat in a conference room beneath fluorescent lights. Karen Lewis had placed the body camera timeline on the table between them. Rachel had already watched it twice. She did not want to watch it again. Karen paused the footage at the moment Rachel arrived. Maggie stood beside the Ferrari without her cane. Tell me what you noticed. Rachel swallowed. Her age. What else? The groceries. The key. The lack of any visible threat. Karen advanced the recording. Rachel's own voice came through. Did we run the plate? Karen paused it. So you questioned ownership verification almost immediately? Yes. Why? Because it didn't make sense not to. Karen looked at her. What happened next? Rachel stared at herself on the screen. Tyler's voice. I'm handling it. Her own silence. I backed down. Why? Rachel's eyes filled. Because I cared more about not embarrassing another officer than about whether she was safe. Karen did not rescue her from the sentence. Rachel continued. I knew she was hurting. You called medical eventually. Too late. You challenged Officer Grant eventually. Too late. Karen's expression stayed neutral. Rachel pressed her palms against the table. I keep seeing Mrs. Brooks look at me. What did you think she wanted? Rachel's voice cracked. For me to be the officer I already knew I was supposed to be. Karen let the silence remain. Elsewhere in the same building, Tyler Grant sat across from independent counsel. His badge was gone from the table. His duty status had been suspended. The investigator asked one question repeatedly in different forms. Why did you continue the detention after ownership documents appeared to match? Tyler gave several answers. The call mentioned a weapon. Paperwork could be stolen. The crowd was interfering. The situation was moving quickly. He had safety concerns. Each explanation sounded weaker than the one before it. Finally, the investigator slid a still image across the table. Maggie's registration, her name clearly visible. You had this in your hand. Tyler stared at it. Yes. And what did you do next? He did not answer. The investigator waited. Tyler looked away. That silence became part of the record, too. Diane Keller's interview lasted even longer. At first, she insisted she had merely been cautious. Then she said the dispatcher misunderstood her. Then she said she had not intended for Maggie to be detained. Karen Lewis eventually played the call aloud. Diane heard her own voice. She may be armed. Then the dispatcher. Did you see a weapon? No. Then Diane again. She doesn't look like the owner. The room went still. Diane began crying. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Karen looked at her. Intent will be evaluated along with what you knowingly reported. Diane covered her face. For the first time since making the call, there was nowhere for her assumption to hide. 6 weeks later, the independent findings were announced. Tyler Grant had committed serious procedural and judgment failures during the detention, including disregarding readily available ownership evidence and failing to respond appropriately to Maggie's reported medical distress. His employment ended. State certification proceedings followed. He would not return to patrol. Diane faced legal consequences for materially false information provided during the emergency call, with the final penalties handled through the courts. Rachel remained with the department, but not unchanged. Her statement was used internally as an example of something departments rarely liked admitting aloud. Knowing better was not the same as doing better. Marcus turned over his original video without selling it. When a television producer offered him money for an exclusive interview, he declined. I didn't film her so I could become famous, he told Maggie later. I filmed because nobody was listening. That sentence stayed with her. By then Maggie was home. James's Ferrari sat safely in the garage. The hospital bracelet was gone. The bruises had begun to yellow and fade, but the larger story kept growing. One evening, Ethan sat across from her at the kitchen table while rain tapped gently against the window. Stacks of letters covered the counter, some supportive, some angry. Some written by adults who described stops, searches, humiliations, and moments when nobody believed them until someone with more authority arrived. Maggie had read every one. Ethan looked at the pile. You were right. About what? This is bigger than what happened to you. Maggie folded one letter and returned it to its envelope. It always was. The department wants to know whether you'll support a public statement about the disciplinary findings. I will. And reporters want to ask whether you think Tyler's punishment was enough. Maggie sighed. They keep asking the wrong question. What is the right one? She looked at him. What changes before the next Tyler Grant meets the next Maggie Brooks? Ethan leaned back. You've been thinking about this. For 6 weeks. That worries me. It should. He almost smiled. Shot to Maggie reached for a folder beside the letters. 3 handwritten pages were inside. Not polished policy language. Just things she had written at her kitchen table. Verify before escalating when identification is available. Treat medical complaints like medical complaints, not arguments. Create an independent review when an officer ignores clear evidence that contradicts the reason for detention. Ethan read them slowly. These are reasonable. They're obvious. Sometimes obvious things are the hardest to make routine. Maggie nodded. That's why I want them written down. Ethan looked at her. Is this what you meant in the hospital? Yes. No revenge. No. No special protection for you. No. Something for the next person. Maggie looked toward the garage door. Beyond it sat the Ferrari Tyler had thought told him everything about the woman standing beside it. He saw a car he thought I couldn't own, she said. Shh. Diane saw the same thing. She looked back at Ethan. I don't want the lesson to be that they should have recognized your mother. Her eyes hardened with quiet certainty. I want the lesson to be that they should have recognized a person. Ethan closed the folder. What do you want to call this? Maggie frowned. Call what? The proposal. I don't care. They'll need a name. Then let the department choose one. He smiled. You know they're going to use yours. Maggie gave him a tired look. I was afraid of that. Rain moved softly down the kitchen window. For the first time since Whitmore Market, Maggie laughed without pain. Then she reached for another letter. Before opening it, she looked at Ethan. One more thing. What? If they invite me to speak to new officers, I'll do it. Ethan's eyebrows rose. You? Yes. What would you tell them? Maggie thought about Tyler, Rachel, Marcus, Diane. 30 phones. One voice. Then she answered. I'd show them the registration. Ethan waited. And I'd ask them what they would have done before they knew who my son was. Outside, the rain kept falling over Alexandria. And somewhere in the city, the first draft of what would eventually change more than one police department was beginning with a 70-year-old woman, 3 handwritten pages, and a question nobody in authority could comfortably avoid. Maggie Brooks could have asked the world to remember the handcuffs, but instead she chose to make sure the next person standing alone beside a car would have something stronger than a powerful relative to protect them. Her deepest victory wasn't watching Tyler lose his authority. It was refusing to let what happened to her to end with her. Sometimes the hardest form of justice is turning personal pain into a safeguard for someone you may never meet. Maggie understood that punishment could close one case, but changing what happens the next time could protect countless strangers. So the next time you see something that feels wrong, don't wait for 30 other people to decide whether it's worth speaking up. Ask one calm question, offer to be a witness, or simply refuse to look away, because Maggie's story showed how much can happen while everyone waits for somebody else. If you had been standing in that parking lot before anyone knew who Maggie's son was, would you have spoken up or stayed silent? Tell me below. And stay with us, because the next story begins with another ordinary moment that isn't nearly as ordinary as it seems.